folks. Welcome to the Saving with Steve show, where we talk about the ins and outs of money, pretty much everything in the sun relates to you having a happier, healthier relationship with money. My name is Steve Sexton. I want to thank you for joining us today. You know what? In our last episode, we had Diane Bernal. She talked about being in a toxic relationship. She talked about, toxic workplace, a relationship issues, knowing that you're in an unsustainable job or unstable job situation, and you look at doing, hey, how can I become self-employed? And she went through many of the wonderful ahas that you need to do that. So you want to check out that episode. But this time, many of you have said, hey, you know what about franchising? What's that all about? We have people from ages from 45 to 65. We have people who are younger that are asking questions. What is franchising? How does it work? What happens there? So, you know what? We have Lisa Linkowsky. She's the CEO and founder of Milestone Franchising. They're a boutique financial advisory practice based out of Central New Jersey. For the last 12 years, she's been in the franchising world. She's a former multi-unit franchise owner herself. Lisa has spoken with more than 500 candidates nationwide who are exploring business ownership at their next chapter. She's a certified financial consultant, monthly impact presenter for other franchise consultants, and a former host of Franchise Focus, where she's conducted over 100 expert interviews across the franchise industry. Lisa's advisory services are always free to candidates, so that's really nice to hear. But today we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff. What is franchising? What type of franchises are available? What skills do I need to succeed to as a franchise owner? How do I need to evaluate franchise opportunities? How much does it cost? All sorts of good things like that. So you can get the ups and downs of what's really going on. And with that, I want to introduce you to Lisa. Lisa, thanks for joining us here today.
You need to take a breath, Steve. That was a lot.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it.
You know what, Lisa? I always love to ask, and our audience loves to know, how did you get started in the franchising business?
It's funny, Steve. I had zero interest in owning a business myself. I'm a third generation business owner. And so I ran to the hills of corporate America for the green, sunny pastures with the corporate office and the luxurious travel and all of the things that come with it. And my family had a business themselves, and I watched them struggle, and it was famine, little tiny feast, famine, feast, famine. And it was rough. It was a rough go. And yeah, I had no interest. But my last 10 years in corporate, I look back and I was definitely heading toward the entrepreneurial place. I was very project oriented and I was very interested in all of that. And so a franchise landed in my mailbox, literally. They were testing it in my area. And I ended up becoming the first owner in this franchise called Birthday Pack. And I then helped to navigate it across the country and help to build it and mentor people and coach people. And I didn't know I existed. I didn't know what it meant to be the first. And luckily, I came out the other side with a great business, multi-unit ownership.
That's wonderful. So, you know what? It's funny what life changes, things show up, the light bulb goes on. And that's one of the big things we want to give our listeners right now is that, you know what, you're listening to Lisa. She's talking about something that she never thought would even come close to being in her life because of her family's experience. Now, you know what, it's something that she's been successful at, taught other people how to do, and now she's helping people move forward with that, which is just wonderful. So, Lisa, let's just start talking about this. What's a franchise? Let's start as simple as what's a franchise?
Yeah. So a franchise at one point, all 4,000 franchise that exist right now, they all had one single location. They had one mom and pop location. And one day someone walks into said business and they go, I'm driving 30 minutes away. Could you put one on my side of town? And they're like, yeah, we'll put one on that side of the town. And then people come in from 30 minutes on the other side of that town going, hey, could you put one over here? And before you know it, you're going, hey, this is something that people really want. And we have created a system where everything is there for you to replicate this. And so a franchise is offering investors the opportunity to take in this business model and now replicate it in their hometown. And people often forget when you have Small Business Saturday that franchise owners, by and large, are your local community members. There are some franchise owners that are big investor consortiums, but by and large, it is your local mom and pops that are making that business run and hum.
Now, here's the thing. You know what? We look at McDonald's, Taco Bell, and we know those are franchise. If you really look into it, you find out they have some corporate stores and all that stuff. But you don't have to start with a McDonald's that might cost $1 million or more to get into, or that type of thing. So, you know what? Let's start talking about what's available and what can people. I'm going to bet there's small little franchises all the way up to big gigantic ones, depending on what you want to bite into.
Yeah. So I have franchises that start at around $10,000, and I have ones that go up to 3.5 million. And so that's a wide swath for people. And what I tell most people is that I like to stay with my clients in and around 150 to 250. 150 to 250,000. So I'm making that very clear to everyone. That's a reasonable number. And some people right now are going, when they hear this, are going to go, what? No, that's not reasonable. But in a franchise, that's a reasonable number. And there are loans that go up to 150,000. And so you can get an SBA loan for that and get into this business with a 10% down on that loan. However, this is the biggest however, and this ends many a Zoom. You're not going to be able to pay yourself for a while. And a lot of people are not prepared for that. And so they don't know how you're not going to borrow money from an SBA to pay yourself. You're not going to want to do that. So you have to look at what your personal finances are. If you're looking to take that leap from corporate, what are your finances? How are you going to handle your health insurance? What are you doing? Do you have a partner, a significant other that's working that they can front those costs while you get your business up and running? But that's the biggest part of this. And also having additional liquid capital, because there are things that go south in business. Something just goes south that you didn't expect for, and you've got to be able to have that additional cash to draw from to keep your business continuing going. And so if you're only coming to the table with this small finite number and that's all you've got, you can be in big trouble. So I tell everyone, you've got to be well capitalized. The number one business killer is lack of financial resources, and franchising is no exception to that.
So the key here is this: make sure you have a financial cushion, one, so you can live your life and you don't close the doors in 3 months because something unforeseen happens. Two, have a little bit extra cash in case for the unforeseens, just like an emergency fund. Okay. And then three, you want to make sure you have the operating costs that you need in order to develop that business. Am I correct in that?
Absolutely, 100%. And understand that you're not going to be able to pay yourself. There are people that early on they start trying to pay themselves, and you can go under doing that. In the beginning, you're putting everything back. The moment that you break even, it's a time to celebrate, but it's not time to start putting money in your pocket. It's the time to start putting money back into your business, making it bigger, stronger, so that you're going to withstand whatever is coming going forward and get it bigger, make it happen, right? So you've got to invest back in your business.
Okay, now that we start talking about that, let's ask this one question. When they've started a franchise, how long typically with a franchise would it take for somebody to break even? I'm not talking about making money. I'm just saying, hey, we're breaking even. And you know what? That is a milestone, but the real milestone is to get to the point where you can pay everybody and yourself. What would be the expectation? What should people be looking at for that so
Yeah,
they can get a
so
real
that's
idea?
why I look at that 150 to 250, because that's usually a home-based business, a mobile business, something with a very light office, right? No brick and mortar that's going to cost. I'm over in Jersey, you're in California. The cost of a brick and mortar is just exorbitant. And so you're going to be looking at your payback and break even so much further down the road. Every business is different, Steve. And so it's hard for me to say that. And every business owner is different. You've got people that are breaking even and they're at 4 months, they're at 6 months. How gritty are you? How good is your sales development? Going out there, knocking on doors, getting the business, making it happen. And so if you could sit there and plan on breaking even within 6 months, oh, and by the way, there's something called validation where you get to talk to the other owners in the business, in the franchise. And that's a key question to ask the other owners. How long did it take for you to break even? Right? Great question. And then to say to them, okay, so it took you 6 months. How long did it take before you were able to pay yourself? And hear from the other owners. So this way, it's not the system telling you, it's the other owners that are in this with you. And understand there's going to be rock stars, but not everyone's a rock star. So you want to talk to a nice level of people in the middle, people that are up here, and even people that are not doing quite so good, because you're going to learn from all of those people and help yourself to make your business that much more robust.
That's wonderful. Hey, folks, we got a lot more to ask Lisa, so stick with us. We're going to be right back with more Saving with Steve. That's perfect. Let's get into the skill sets next.
Okay.
Okay, because that's gigantic. So here we go.
Gigantic.
Todd, we're moving into segment 2 with Lisa on episode 295. So here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, folks, welcome back to the Saving with Steve show. I truly want to thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you for letting your friends, family, and associates know about the show. All the replays are available at savingwithsteve.us. If you're enjoying the stories of helpful insight and information on Saving with Steve, I encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss a show. Check out a few of our affiliates at UK Health Radio, BBS Radio, Talk Radio New York City, E360 TV, Las Vegas TV Networks, AMF and 247. All these networks are dedicated to empowering you to solve problems, uplift your spirit, and live a life of personal and financial freedom. Hey, you can also follow us on Facebook, join the Saving with Steve Sexton Insiders Club, get all the guest gifts, replays. You're definitely going to want to listen to this one on a replay because you know what? Lisa's already given us some really good ahas, and just the understanding of what's going on here is really very key. So with that, let's get back to Lisa. So here we go. Let's talk about the skills one needs to succeed as a franchise owner.
So I represent over 600 franchise brands nationwide. And there are franchise brands that absolutely do not want you to have any experience whatsoever. Think a painter. They don't want a whole bunch of painters coming in and owning a painting concept because those painters are doing their business the way that they do it. They paint the way that they paint. They're not going to come in and go, oh, you have to paint this way, because they're going, wait a second, but I paint that way, not this way. So they really, truly, most franchises do not have any expectation for you to have experience in that franchise. There's some exceptions, but they are the exception, not the rule. The skill set that I look for, because I vet my candidates very carefully, because this is not for everybody. And so I'm looking for grit, resilience, being able to get back up once something hits you and being able to get back up and going, and business development skills. There are very few businesses that if you build it, they will come. Think food is the rare exception because we all love food. We're all waiting for whatever the new food concept that comes about. But you're not having a knock on doors to get people to come to your food concept ordinarily, right? But with something in a franchise, most franchises, you've got to be out there and you've got to go grind and you've got to go to your chamber and you've got to go meet with people and you've got to let people know, hey, I'm a member of your community and this is the service or the offering that I'm bringing to you. And without that, you're dead in the water from the beginning, because you need it. And if you don't have it, you've got to hire for it. The franchise will take care of the marketing. Oftentimes they'll have a robust website and they'll do your SEO and all that. And you can always hire someone to do your posting. But that business development piece, being out at farmers markets and being out in your community whenever possible, sponsoring Little League with your name on the back of whatever the business is, whatever it is, that's what you need to be doing all the time. Oh, and you'll have a wrap vehicle too. So oftentimes in a franchise. So you've got this moving billboard all around.
No, I think that's interesting. I love how direct you are with this because many people think that it's a lot easier than that because the marketing system's there and all that. And I'm smiling because I'm like, oh, this is great. She's so direct because there's
Jersey
no
Direct.
no, there's no fluff, and that's great. So, you know what? The reality is basically what you're saying is if you're gonna do this, you're gonna have to be like any other business owner.
That's right.
Nothing's going to be given to you. You're given the concept, how it works, the whole shot. You have the framework, but you
Yes.
have to make that framework work. And when doing that, you're the one that's going to have to go step out, knock on the doors of the businesses, call those businesses, go to the chamber, make sure everybody knows who you are and what you do. And you're going to have to wrap your car and you're going to have to share it with everybody. This
That's
isn't the McDonald's on the corner where they're building it and they'll come because everybody wants to go to McDonald's or Starbucks or whatever. And
Yep,
that's one of the reasons why those are 3, 4, $5 million or more just to get in, if you're
that's
lucky.
correct.
So,
Yes,
okay, perfect, perfect. Okay, so let's move into the next part of this. Let's really talk about and take some time with this is to help somebody understand how do they know what franchise is for them.
beautiful. And that's my entire job. And in the introduction that you gave me, you actually said that I'm a boutique finance advisory and it's a franchise advisory. I'm well read into this. As you talked about my background, this is all that I do day in and day out. Just like your financial advisor knows what's happening with the market day in and day out, and they know what's happening with the stocks. You don't, the normal person doesn't have time to pay attention to that. And staying on top of 600 franchises is a lot. And so I give my clients, I ask a lot of questions in the beginning, and it will shake out any red flags that I have right away. Then I give them an assessment that actually measures their business acumen and especially for owning a franchise. Why? Because not everyone is well suited to own a franchise. If you're too entrepreneurial, you're going to be arguing with everyone about why they're doing it this way and how come they're not doing it that way. So you have to have a level of compliance in a franchise. So it measures that, measures a whole bunch of things. And so I give this assessment and it also will corroborate my concerns that are red flags that I saw when I was talking to them initially. Or there's no red flags, we're good to keep on going. Then also giving them a candidate form where we dig in even further. And we also will then take the industries. There's so many different industries. Campgrounds are franchises. Who knew? I grew up camping my whole life, had no idea. So there's so many franchises other than food. And so what are some areas that people would really love and also they would not like at all? Let's say a pet franchise and they do not like animals or they're highly allergic. I'm not going to show them a pet franchise, right? Because that's not going to work. So now we just narrow this all down and then I go into my cocoon and I have some people right now lined up on my little runway waiting to find out what franchises that I'm going to present to them and get them to 3 or 5 concepts that fit their finances, fit their background, fit their passion, right? Because if there's something that they really, then yeah, I'm going to try and find something like that for them. And also, is it business to business versus B2C? Is it retail versus mobile? All of those things, bring this down and going, here, this is what I have for you. Let me make this introduction and show you these at a top level 10,000 foot view. And then they say, Lisa, these are great. Can we please meet these franchises? And then I continue to stay with them and teach them about the franchise model and what to expect while they're going through this, all the way until they get to the point of either, Lisa, this is not for us, or Lisa, we're going to be signing. And if I get them to the point that it's not for them, I did my job 100%.
I think it's wonderful. I like to hear that because, you know what, so many people are making this massive life change and they've got to know there's many things that are going to occur, but they also got to know when somebody says it's not for you.
Correct. And
So,
I count Steve, I count on my testimonials, my wins and my losses equally the same. So when I've gotten someone to the point of no franchise for you, Seinfeld reference, that was a win because it saved them from doing something that could become catastrophic for them.
Oh yeah, because
Sorry,
everybody's they're
didn't mean
putting
to
their life
interrupt.
in it. I think that's wonderful. I was just going to say that was a great point because we're going to stick with us right now, folks. We're going to be right back with more Lisa here from Milestone Franchising. Hey folks, welcome back to the Saving with Steve show. We talk about the ins and outs of money. You know what? I just want to thank you all. I know we're over 1 million listeners in the States and we're over 250,000 overseas. So I just appreciate you for doing that. A special shout out to AMF and 247 for sharing this through the radio stations throughout the United States. This has been wonderful. But I really want to get back to talking to Lisa. So, Lisa, one of the things that you talked about and you said, hey, people really need to know about passive investing. So tell us what that's all about. Why should people know about that?
So they should be cautioned about it, is the word that I would use. There's a lot of TikToks out there that talk about passive investments. And just where people think that owning a franchise is easy, they think that there are these magical unicorns out there that they can own something, do very little with it, and get piles and piles of money from it. And that just does not exist. And I hear it from regular educated people. And I'm like, are you hearing what you're saying? And they're like, yeah, it does sound dumb. And I'm like, all right, I'm not calling it dumb, but it's we get drawn like a moth to a bright light and that shiny object again. And so it's a word of caution. I have so many people that don't want to leave their job because they're afraid of that risk. They're afraid to make that leap. And so they're like, how can I work my job and run this business? And what I say to them is, how flexible is your job? Are you remote? If something happens at 2:30 in the afternoon on a Thursday, can you respond? And if the answer is no, then there's the answer, right? So it all depends on your flexibility. But I tell everyone you should have at least 20 to 25 hours set aside for your business with that flexibility that if something happens, you've got to be able to be there to answer that customer, that irate customer, or your technician that decided to go to the beach because it's a beautiful day and ghost your business. You've got to be able to respond. Otherwise, your business is going to be in danger. And so the more that you care about it and the more that you cultivate it, the better and stronger that business is going to be.
Let's make this a little, this has been great for franchising and a reality check, but let's take it a little step further. You talked about 25 hours a week. See, I've grown up being a self-employed person and I don't know what 25 hours a week looks like because it's typically up more. And I get the feeling that you're in the same way. So let's do the reality check. When we hear 25 hours a week, what is it really for somebody if they're operating a franchise? Because quite frankly, they've got a framework to build a wonderful business and it's been successful as long as they stick in that framework. But can you really do it on 25 hours a week?
If you hire yourself in your business, then yes, it is. So if you're hiring a GM to run the business right out of the gate, then yes, you can do this and you can do it successfully, understanding that if you've never hired before, you're going to be making some mistakes. And so you might go through a couple GMs or that higher person that you've put in place for you. And also understanding that that person's not going to care as much about your business because it's not theirs. So maybe give them some sweat equity, right? To give them a
Mhm.
little bit of care and concern or something, some kind of bonus structure, something to keep that carrot in front of them so that they're focused on this business and making a concerted effort on your behalf. But having said that, in our last segment, when we talked about that payback period and that break even, if you're hiring you in your business, you now just kick that ball further down the road for being able to pay yourself back. But you also get to keep your job. And so you're working and you're keeping your job, but you're now break even just doubled. Time just doubled. Being able to pay yourself just doubled because you now have to pay someone right out of the gate. And that money's got to come from somewhere. So that's my only word of advice. It can happen if you've got flexibility. If you have a friend or a family member that is really close to you that you're like, oh, they would be perfect for this business, and you know their work ethic and you've got a good relationship with them from the beginning, then you've got that much better. But if you're just having to hire blank and you don't know what you don't know because you've never hired before, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to trip.
I was really glad you brought that up because many years ago I knew this gentleman. He was a CPA, and basically what he did is he helped people who had a lot of money who wanted to buy a franchise, and they would hire him to build it, set it up, the whole shot. He'd take a percentage, and you know what? They would. I can't say they're all wealthy, but they had enough money to. He'd say it's going to be 6 to 8 months before we hit X, and this is what my experience is, and this is what I've done, and all that kind of stuff. And he would do that for them. But he, you know what? I want to say physically imploded because of all the work that he was doing to get to that goal so he can get his bonus and all that kind of stuff. So it was one of those things, and basically what he would do is also find somebody to replace him once he got to that point. So it was one of those things where the people who had a bit of money could afford to do it, loved it, but you know what? I think those people are hard to find. Am I
That's
correct?
That is 100% correct. Yes. Yeah. And listen, it's not everybody. And I tell everyone if now is not the time and you don't have enough money set aside to make this happen right now, then start working toward that goal, just like you would buying a home, just like you would planning a wedding, like anything else that's a big expenditure, and start planning toward it. And this way, you're being pragmatic and you're not being reactive when and if you get cut from your company with no plan at all. I meet people in career transition all the time that they've lost their job, they're desperate, they can't get a new job, and they start making really bad decisions because they start to panic. So start having a plan now. Listen to this and go, you know what? I'm going to start a fund. That's my business ownership fund and start making it happen. And then you get there.
You know, I think the best statement I've ever heard about something like that is, you know what, you want to know where the exits are when havoc happens, because if you don't, everything's done in desperation. And
Absolutely.
you also know when decisions in desperation
Do
rarely turn
not
out
go
well.
well together. They do not.
Yeah.
And there's predatory people out there, Steve, that will tell people whatever they want to hear. They are. And when you're in a desperate frame of mind, you do bad things and it
Mhm.
can be decimating. And then people will squawk about how bad the franchise industry is. And I'm like, where was your culpability that you knew that this wasn't a good decision? It's just like dating. When everyone's telling you, don't date that person because they're not good for you and they're a bad person. And you're like, they'll get better. They're going to change. Everything's going to be better. You want that framework to be as solid as possible from day one, that structure, so that when the high winds come and anything that could come south comes at you, you're going to weather it and you're going to keep on standing. And you're not just going to topple over because you weren't prepared.
And folks, I think it's important to think about economic changes and things that have occurred. There's people who purchased franchises 5, 6 months before COVID hit. How do they get through that? Many of them did, some didn't.
Some did.
You have basically what's been going on for the last 3 or 4 years just in our country with the ever-changing economic conditions. And we have this AI thing coming through. We've seen all the people who wrote resumes for people, they're not needed anymore because they can do it on AI. And they can even find the questions that they need to be asked during the interview and how to prepare for them and how to answer them the whole shot. It's really important that you look at being able, just like Lisa said, to understand what the winds are changing and how to be able to be there and have the wherewithal to do that. You know what? I would like to talk a little bit because we've had a lot of questions. But you know what? We're going to take a quick break and we're going to come right back with Lisa here and talk more about franchises. Here we go. Hey, what folks? Welcome back to the Saving with Steve show where we talk about the ins and outs of money. We're talking about franchising today with Lisa Linkowsky. She's there, the CEO at Milestone Franchising. And the next part I'd like to talk about is, you know what? When we start talking about, and I know we talked about this a little earlier, franchising could be costing as little as $10,000. Okay, but when we've got something costs $10,000, it's something typically somebody's gonna be able to do at home. Am I
Yeah,
correct in that?
that is
Okay.
correct.
Could you just give me an example of what a franchise like that would be? So
Yeah,
people can get a
there's
visual.
travel. Travel would be a good example. You need a computer and you need a cell phone, and then you need additional money for your marketing collateral. But a lot of time, people will go into that in a very part-time-ish kind of way and then start to build it out into more of a full-time enterprise. But yeah, there are businesses that are home-based and they're reasonable to get into. And they're not going to be that exciting and big, and they're not going to replace a six-figure salary out of the gate, But if you keep cultivating them, making them happen, they can turn into some pretty incredible endeavors.
So basically, what I'm getting to is more of the cost side of this. Hey, we're paying $10,000 for this. We're going to have to pay for marketing, which might be three or four, $5,000 a month.
Yeah.
Am I right in something like that?
Every franchise is different, but yes, it depends on what they're guiding you on. Yes, then you've got to pay for insurance and you've got to pay for when you're going in networking and doing any of the things that are networking related. If you're going to sponsor like that little league that we talked about, like any that goes under marketing though, but
Mhm.
any of the things that are extra, it's really marketing and insurance, and you've got a business and your computer and your phone, and you're ready to go.
Okay. Now, and the interesting thing about you said sponsors was that I know one person has a franchise and it's like an executive recruiting type franchise, but basically what he does is he provides a scholarship to every single high school for graduates. So he gets to stand in front of all the parents at
And
graduation
talk
just
about
before
his business.
summer.
There you go. Listen, you've
You
got a
know,
captive audience.
oh yeah, and you know what? And everybody after he gives his pitch, basically he says, "Yeah, everybody appreciates me for giving the scholarship." So I thought that was very interesting. But what it really comes down to is you're telling me that people are going to have to find the traditional ways of marketing, unique ways of marketing,
Yeah.
whether it be wraps or what have you. It could be billboards, it could be placements in local magazines, depending on what generates for you. And so, that's no brick and mortar. So when we're looking, what would be a typical brick and mortar type franchise that the franchise is going to build that for them, that type of thing? What are people looking at from a cost, just a buy-in standpoint?
So inflation, Steve, but it's over 500,000 now. And you can, if you're doing a second generation location, then you could get in for less money, but maybe 300,000, let's say. So depending on what the business model is, but you've got medical concepts that are out there. You have beauty concepts, things that are in the beauty industry, health, fitness. Boutique fitness is usually a little bit more expensive depending on what that is. There are things that are in the STEM field. So think something that's after school for kids to,
Okay.
help themselves with enrichment. There's so many different avenues in that space that are in that retail brick and mortar space. But when you're talking about the coast, which you and I are both on, you've got an expensive lease. Is it requiring you to be in a class A, which is having an anchor store that's like a Whole Foods? Class B, which is where you've got something a little bit less anchoring you, and now your lease is a little bit less, or Class C, traffic's not going to really be there, but it's a lot less of an expense for you and lease wise. So that lease is really expensive. And that's why I get really shy about, and also trying to find an open space. There is
Hmm.
very little open space out there. And so I had a client that they just had their grand opening a couple months ago, and it took them a year to find their location because there was not any space available. So that's the other thing that you could sit there and sign with a brick and mortar and not be up and running for 10 to 12 months. And now TikTok, when we talk about that payback and we talk about when you're going to be able to pay yourself, your clock hasn't even started because you didn't even open up your doors. It took you a year before your doors opened.
So those are really important things to think about when you're doing these franchises. And then once somebody gets going, depending on the franchise, it just depends on how big they want to build it.
Yes.
And you know what? I always find out when people talk about rock stars, nobody just gets out of the gate and flies. They've got some experience in development or they've been doing it for a while and they just keep growing and growing and they're not sustaining it. Is that kind of the situation? Or
So I am going to tout my own horn that I was a rock star in my franchise and I didn't have any experience with it, but I was super gritty and it was a marketing concept and my background was marketing. So that did definitely help me there. But I was gritty and I will say that over and over again. And I had to do cold calling and I had to get rejected over and over again. And I was out there doing that again and again. And so, depending if you've got that capability, then yes, you can sit there and scale. And franchising is meant for scalability. 53% of the owners that are out there are multi-unit owners, but 47% chose to either buy themselves a job or they were too paralyzed on how to get to that multi-level stratosphere. So they just sat and didn't do anything. And they were like, I'm fine with what I've got and I'm not gonna move any further. But it is meant for scaling. And you can scale by having more vans on the road. You can scale by having more locations. You can scale by sitting there and just having your phone in the travel one that we just talked about, and you are just out there calling, meeting, talking, and doing all those things. So scalability can look very different based upon what the model looks like.
Just one of our viewers, Emily, she got involved with a haircutting franchise. 12 years, she just ran it on her own. She made enough to cover things and stuff like that. And then one day she realized that if she did certain things, her business would increase significantly. And she got to the point where she realized the best places to put these. The company had already suggested the best places, but she figured out if I've got this and I've got this and I got this and I got this, and hers was a low cost haircutting type situation, and it was right for areas around high schools. So she ended up she's what she said, I have 15 of them now. They're all within walking distance of a high school. And my busiest time is from basically 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays and Sundays. And basically it's moms and kids coming in and getting their hair done.
You get their haircut.
And she never thought it could be like that. She goes, what the weird thing is she wished she had figured that out 10 years earlier.
Yeah,
So it's
for sure.
interesting that you say that you can be, she wasn't the rock star, but then she became one. And it's just because she realized something and had the aha moment. Lisa, I really want to thank you for being with us today. How can people get a hold of you if you're looking at franchise?
Yeah, so all of my socials are at Milestone Franchising. So that's all my socials. And then my email address is right here. And my phone number is 609-540-2272. But if you email me, I have a calendar link and we can schedule something. And just a reminder again that you don't pay anything for this. This is overseen by the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. And so you just get educated. You get educated, you do what you're really good at doing, and let a professional do what they're really good at doing, which is guiding you to figure out this whole business journey and whether or not it's the right path for someone.
I want to echo that. You know what? One of the cool things about what you heard from Lisa today, she's just really direct. So if it isn't for you, it isn't for you, and that's okay. And the cool thing about that is you've just realized you're not going to waste a bunch of money.
That's it. At the end of the
So
day, let's just not do any harm to anybody, Steve.
that's the way it rolls. So
That's it.
Lisa, thank you so much for being here. Folks, this is Lisa Linkowsky. She's a wonderful woman, CEO franchise of Milestone Franchising. If you're looking at franchises or looking at, you know what, I want to go into a self-employed business, this would be a great avenue to check out. So with that, stick with us. We'll be right back with more Saving with Steve.
Thank
Hey folks, welcome back to the Saving with Steve show, where we talk about the ins and outs of money, pretty much everything that's done relates to you having a happier, healthier relationship with money. My name is Steve Sexton. I do want to thank you for joining us. We just had Lisa Linkowsky of Milestone Franchising. Hey, if you're looking into that, you want to check that out. Also, you can go to our website. We will have that evaluation to see if you're fit for a franchise. And you might want to save yourself some time and money and check that out. Now, one of the things that I'd like to do is just talk about, you know what, the 5 top scams here in 2026. Okay. The big thing is, first one is an employment scam, according to ARP and others. U.S. employers have laid off over 1.17 million workers just in 2025, the most since the pandemic. The employment scams are making a big comeback, according to the Better Business Bureau. Okay. and the labor markets and all that stuff. And basically, you know what? We've got desperate job hunters, maybe more susceptible to fraud, including bogus jobs, online ads, social media, job search websites. Some scammers are also impersonating real employment agencies and companies. Their goal is to obtain your personal information or money and requiring you to pay a fee. First of all, how do you stay safe with this? One, never pay a fee. If you're required to pay money to get a job or an interview, it's a scam. Distrust big promises. Be highly suspicious of guaranteed of great pay, few hours from work for home jobs. Second, understand the job app risk. Reputable sites like LinkedIn, Indeed aren't immune to fake job posts. Keep that in mind. Scrutinize the source. If a recruiter contacts you, check the company website, see if they're hiring for any particular position, and if the person actually works there. Because if they don't, hey, you got an issue. Be careful when posting irreverently. Think about what you're posting publicly. And this was said to you by the Senior Director of Victim Support at ARP. Criminals could use your information to manipulate you. Okay? Recovery scams. If recovery scams, criminals return to victims with promises of recouping their losses by charging a fee for non-existing services. You know what? You get statements like, I think we're going to see a lot of recovery of scams. You know what? It's called a pig butchering or financial grooming scam. Okay. And it's usually based overseas, carefully fostering an online relationship with a victim to create feelings of trust and luring them to bogus cryptocurrencies, stuff like that. Once victims realize they're in the midst of the scam, they often tell the criminals that they're calling the police. The criminal notes this, they probably record every conversation, then follow up weeks later, posting as somebody from law enforcement, a customer advocacy group organization, a law firm, or government agency. Hey, how do you stay safe? You watch for the upfront fees. Criminals may charge in advance for their fake service and ask you to pay with a credit card, cryptocurrency, or even Venmo. Beware of phony checks. Scammers will sometimes send a counterfeit check, often for more than what you lost, the FCC notes. Then they'll ask you to send the overpayment back to you. Do your homework. Search recovery firm names using such as scam, fraud, and complaint. Digital arrest. The process is terrifying. You receive a call saying that if you're the subject of a criminal investigation, it may be a police officer charging you with money laundering, or maybe it's a customs official claiming they intercepted drugs en route to your home. Bogus law enforcement officers then interrogate you on a video call, not just for hours, but days, and then they threaten you with criminal charges and pressure you to pay settlements or fines. Hey, it's a terror-based scam that involves holding personal dignity captive. Okay? They'll get you on a video call. They won't let you go. They basically transfer you from one person to the next. Digital arrest is an enormous problem in India that started spreading to the United States. In India, digital arrest scams related to cybercrimes nearly tripled over the last 3 or 4 years. The Indian government reports in 2025 it separated a retired doctor died from a heart attack after nearly 70 hours of digital arrest and constant audio surveillance. Scammers use AI to create deep fake videos, forged documents, including court orders or arrest warrants, to deceive victims by making threats. You know what? If somebody's going to do something with you through Zoom or something like that, tell them they need to show up in person. Okay? You want to hang up. Remember how a scam works. Okay? You know what? These are just a few. There's romance scams and others, folks. I just want to make sure you know what's happening. So if it happens to you, you can think for a second and go, you know what? Not me. With that, folks, I want to thank you for joining us today. Lisa was wonderful. I hope you have a wonderful week. See you next time right here on Saving with Steve.